If you're new to sales, then there's no doubt you're going to make a few mistakes along the way. Now, good news is this: if we're smart about it, we can learn from those mistakes. But the reality is this: if we can avoid those mistakes altogether, we accelerate our progress. In this video, I'm going to share with you some of the lessons that I learned early on in sales, with hopes that I'll help you avoid making the same mistakes I did. And at the very end, I'll share with you kind of one of the biggest situations that I encountered and how I navigated through that, so that if you encounter a similar situation, you'll be able to do the same. Hi, I'm Shawn Casemore, and I help you learn how to be a high-performing sales professional so you can earn more in less time. If that sounds good to you, and why wouldn't it? Make sure you click the like on this button and click the subscribe. You'll be notified each and every time I release a new video. You know, we've all been there. We've all started in sales. So whether you're watching this video as somebody who's been in sales for a while, or you're brand new to sales, we've all been in your position. I remember for myself, it was being nervous about, meeting with somebody for the first time. What questions am I going to ask? How am I going to move them from a conversation to buying this thing I'm selling? What if they say no, right? There's so much stress. Well, here's the reality. There's only a certain number of lessons that I've learned that have helped me accelerate performance. And I found that with others who I've worked with who are new in sales, this has dramatically improved their performance. It's sped them along to making more money faster because they've avoided those mistakes that I made at such a young age. Because I was actually started in sales officially in my 20s, but began knocking on doors when I was 11. So it's been a while. Nonetheless, let's jump into those lessons. Lesson number one is pretty simple. Know your next step. In fact, always know your next step. I can tell you, when I first started my official job in sales, I was selling cars. So in that case, people would come to the parking lot, I would meet them in the parking lot, we'd have a conversation, and invariably we would get to discussing a car. After all, otherwise, why would they stop by? It was rare that somebody stopped by and didn't want to buy a car. Now, they didn't always buy from me. But what I found is I could have that conversation, just like I'm having now, but I wasn't always clear in my mind as to what the next step was. So I would get locked up in discussing family and friends and colors of cars and features and benefits, and I didn't know where to go after that point. And I'd walk away frustrated because we didn't go anywhere. I didn't make the sale.
Right now, we are having...
Talk louder.
Okay, our prices have never been lower.
Son, you have to talk louder.
Never been lower.
Louder, son!
Bud Liquor! Our prices have never been lower!
Stop it!
In fact, people started calling me saying, hey, Shawn, I just want to let you know I had a great conversation with you, but I bought a car down the street. So clearly that person was better at the job. The big gap for me was not knowing what the next step is. What you want to do is make sure you understand, what are the steps in my sales pipeline? Or what are the steps in my sales process? And then when you're in a conversation, just always know in the back of your mind what the next steps are. When I started out, I used to write them, and I had them on the cover of my book. So if I sat down with you, I'd open my book and I could see my steps that I could quickly reference down, which was a reminder as to what the next step is, which allowed me to always be heading in that direction. So always know your next step. Now, this one's a little bit hard for me. I learned it early on. You always want to listen as much, or better yet, more so than you speak. So as you can tell, I can talk, right? I do this for a living. I attend conferences, speak as a keynoter, do virtual presentations, you name it. So I enjoy speaking both to groups as well as large audiences. However, in sales, that's not always a good thing. It's good if you can speak to others and if you're comfortable doing so, but you don't learn anything if you don't stop talking. So here's the key. If you want to make sure you speak the same amount, or preferably less than what your buyer does, ask questions, right? So have a good list of questions ready, and then ask them and sit and listen. And as you're listening, it's okay if you want to take notes. So even if you're new and you're thinking, okay, they're giving me responses here, I don't know what to do with them, write them down. Just say to the buyer, you've raised some good points. Do you mind if I take some notes here? Nobody is going to care, right? And you can even get software that, if you're doing this virtually, you can get software that'll take those notes for you. But the point is this: always ask good questions, and that will enable you to make sure you don't talk at the same level or more so than your buyer. And that allows you to learn the information you need to learn in order to take that next step. All right, if you're enjoying these tips, make sure you click the like on this button. That will ensure that everybody can see this, which is my goal, so I appreciate your help with that. And if you click subscribe to the channel, you'll be notified each and every time I release a new video, which is typically every single week. If you're new to sales, one of the challenges, obviously, at the start is getting some prospects lined up. But as you start to gain some momentum, what I find is we often go from documenting those prospects in a book or on a piece of paper, maybe in a CRM, but I find when people are new, they're a little bit uneasy jumping into CRM right away. So they document it somewhere. But as you get busy, you need to keep track of where everybody is at, right? What is the next step for each of these prospects you're dealing with? So for that reason, number 3 lesson is document your progress. I can't tell you how many times I connected with people early on and I'd be asking myself, so where did we leave off? What are the next steps? And so invariably, here's a little strategy for you. You can ask. You can say something like, the last discussion we had was really good. I wanted to get your perspective on what those next steps are. Now, that's kind of a backup plan. Preferably you come in prepared and you know the next step, which is why lesson number 3 is always be ready.
I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready, I'm ready.
And have documented where you left off so that when you reconnect, you know what the next step is. I even teach when it comes to your prospecting touch points to have a plan. Here's my 8 steps of how I'm going to reach out to people, and then document which step you're on, number 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., in your notes, so that you know when you look at company A or person A that okay, they're at step 2, which means next is step 3. Document your progress. It makes conversations obviously flow better. You don't get into the awkward situation of not knowing what's next, and it speeds up your ability to move to the close because you're always progressing that discussion and conversation. Okay, this next one goes without saying, but I made this mistake early on and it got so frustrating. Make sure you ask for the sale. So lesson number 4, ask for the sale, right? Here's what that means. If you're in a conversation, you've explored features and benefits, you understand your buyer, what their needs are, and it really appears to you like there's a good fit here, you want to ask for the sale. Now, it's okay if it's a little bit too early. If it is, the buyer's going to say to you, well, I have some more questions first. Okay, no problem. But make sure you ask. So you might say something like, it seems to me at this point that what I'm selling, and again, you can personalize this a bit, but what I'm selling really aligns with what you're looking for. Would you agree? Again, they're either going to say yes or no. If you say something a little more direct, you might say, well, it seems to me like the next step would be to put the proposal together and move forward. Does that sound good to you, right? So what I'm doing here is I'm testing by asking for the sale. You can do it in a multitude of ways, but the point is if you think you're getting there, ask a question. It's harmless, and your buyer will tell you, yes, I agree, that's the next step, or no, I don't. But going back to some of my previous videos, if it's early on in the discussion, you haven't really got into building much rapport yet, you don't really fully understand the buyer's situation or their needs, and you ask that question, they say, yes, send me a quote or send me a proposal, they might be pushing you out of the office. So be very careful if you're going to suggest that as your next step. But make sure you ask for the sale. Ultimately, your buyer will tell you whether you're on track or not, and that will ensure that if you are on track, they'll say yes. Then it's a no-brainer. You know what the next steps are. If they say no, then you know what you need to address in order to move things forward. This next one comes from personal experience. You may have had the same even though you're new to sales. But when it comes to objections, and you're going to get all sorts, right? Your price is too high, your timing's off, this isn't the best solution for us. The objections come in all different forms.
I'll allow it.
Objection, Your Honor, on grounds that this is redundant.
Overruled.
But here's the key. When you get an objection, don't argue with it. Don't disagree with it, right? I did that early on. I'd say, well, why would you think that? Not the best question to ask. You always want to agree. Because at the end of the day, we're not the buyer. And if they share with us there's a concern, it's obviously a concern for them. We need to respect that. How do we do that? We say, okay, I understand the price for you right now is too high. And then we move to our transition, right? So whatever that transition might be, you might say, I understand right now this price seems too high. But if we go back to our return on investment, right? We talked about that in an earlier video. My point is this: if you're given an objection by a buyer, don't disagree, don't dispute it, don't argue it, don't clam up and say nothing. Make sure you agree with it. Say, I understand. And then move to your transition statement, which is bringing them back into the value and the return on investment that your product or service provides. All right, if you're a sales professional, and especially if you're new in sales, then staying on track with all the different activities and goals you need to can become a challenge. Even if you've got the best software, tracking your own personal progress is a challenge. For that reason, I created what I call the 30-day action sales planner. There's a link below. You can grab it yourself, put it to use. There's no charge at all, and it's my gift to you to try and help you if you're new in sales to progress and accelerate faster than ever before. Now, last but not least, if you're new in sales, you're going to need to practice your influence. So I put this video together for you to watch next that will help you master your influence when it comes to selling. And until next time, let's get out there and go sell something.